Welcome to New Catholic Generation. We are back from the summer. I am Renee from Reborn Pure, and this is David from Catholic Contrast, joined by Ned from Parables of the Film Industry, and Joe, the Catholic apologist. And today we are discussing Ben-Hur, the movie. We went to see it on a few days ago, but there's one thing different, if you've noticed, is that we are in another location yet again. I say yet again because if you saw the recent Catholic social media news videos, I was in a prison cell or the cinder block dorm room where they were filmed, and now we are in this brick room. Well, anyway.
It's cozy. Yeah, it's cozy.
Yeah, apparently the floor in the regular studio is being fixed right now. It warped over
the
time.
Summer, yeah.
Over time.
We'll be back there next week. Okay, so the new Ben-Hur movie follows a long tradition of using the story based from the wildly successful novel that was written, Ben-Hur, A Tale of Christ, back in the 1800s. There was a short silent film made in 1907, which got expanded into a full-length feature film in the 1920s, which was the most expensive silent film made at the time.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, and it was a huge production. They spent $3.7 million. In 1959, that film was remade into a full-color feature-length film that was 3.5 hours long and also had one of the biggest budgets ever at the time from the golden age of Hollywood biblical epics. It was critically acclaimed, won 11 Academy Awards, which was not matched until, I think, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. Yeah. Now, following in its footsteps is the new, much maligned, actually, Ben-Hur of 2016, which has been slammed by critics a little bit. 27% on Rotten Tomatoes, and opened to sixth place in the box office.
27%?
Yeah, just 27%.
Wow.
So
I'm surprised.
basically, it's a trilogy of the same movie.
Basically,
yeah. I'm wondering if these critics just loved the old one a lot, because they're all like professional movie critics and like, oh, Ben-Hur is one of the greatest ones ever. You know?
Well, yes, that is one of the reasons why this new Ben-Hur was not really, I guess, liked as much, is because it's always standing in the shadow of really the two. The silent film is regarded as one of the best silent films, and then also the 1959 one is regarded as one of the greatest films ever. And so this one has big footsteps to fill. However, none of us have seen the original Ben-Hur. So we saw it. This was our first time. We did that to be unbiased in our initial review. Ned will be getting the old one from 1959, which we will watch later, and then we will compare the two. But in the meantime, we will review the new one.
We did go with a friend of mine who, Alice, came with us, and she had seen the original movie, and she's like, that original movie, the one made previously, most recently, and she said that she did like the old one better than the new one, but there were things in the new one that weren't in the old one that she really liked. So, but for me, I was kind of worried after seeing some cool clips of that older one online, of like the chariot scene that wasn't supposed to happen, where he jumps over the, what fell in the racetrack?
Yeah, there was in the 1959 version there was a bit of one of the chariots that fell down on the track, and then one of the stuntmen, when he was driving, almost flipped over the edge.
Right, and it was unplanned, and like it looked so real and intense, and it's because they actually built the whole set themselves, cost millions of dollars, and had how many extras? 10,000 extras.
Yep.
I was like afraid going into the 2016 movie, just having seen latest like Marvel movies and things like that. There's so much CGI. It's heavily CGI. If you saw Noah, you know what I'm talking about. And I was kind of worried, like, for the chariot scene, is it just going to feel like a CGI, like, computer thing, or is it going to feel real? And when I saw the movie, it felt much more real than I had expected, and I was really tense and into it, so
it was
I was
way more
about
real
that.
than The Hobbit, and The Hobbit was filled with CGI.
Oh, can we not talk about The Hobbit?
That's actually an
I
interesting
like
note. Yeah, because the director, he also did Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. He was very adamant in behind the scenes, and actually the lead cast member who played Judah Ben-Hur, in behind-the-scenes clips, if you watch them, he's like, when they're doing the chariot sequence, he's like, everybody's going to think this was some big CGI fest, but we actually did it for real.
Everyone's going to think that this is some sort of big CGI feat that we managed to construct, but it's not at all.
And if you watch behind the scenes clips for the chariot sequence, all the horses were real, all the chariots were real. They actually did drive that all. The only things in that scene that were CGI were, again, set extensions, which is similar to what they did back in the golden days of Hollywood, where they'd expand sets with matte paintings. Now you can just do it in 3D a lot easier.
Yeah, when they dragged people in the sand. Okay, if you have tiny little kids, that was kind of a intense
This is not a movie for tiny little kids.
There would be people stuck under the chariot and stuff, and you're just like, oh goodness, and they're going like, I don't know how fast horses go, but full speed, while someone's being like dragged. It's like, don't take your toddler to this
that was a little hardcore.
Anyways, what were your overall impressions of the movie?
I have to say that having not seen the first one, I liked this movie on an overall basis. I liked it more than the previous movies we've reviewed, like, God's Not Dead or
The Young Messiah.
Yeah, I definitely liked it better than both of those. Morally, there wasn't anything that stuck out incredibly. Like, this is, like, not right. There were a couple things that made me slightly worried, but it wasn't specific enough to be sure which way they were leaning to.
Right.
So.
I remember you talking about them. Like the part with Jesus, for example, when Jesus shows up in the film, which is cool that he's there and definitely has that glowing virtue about his character, which was accurate.
Yeah.
But there was that one part where he starts talking about love, and you're like, well, I wish you'd say a little bit more than that. Our society's already wrapped up in the love everyone. Everyone's great.
Yeah, the thing was, there was a certain point, I think it was when they were trying to stone that one guy, and Jesus came over, it was a very interesting way that they did that particular scene.
Yeah.
But it was like the third or fourth time, basically repeating almost the exact same thing in the exact same way. If you say it too much, it could end up meaning very much of what a watered-down version of Catholicism is kind of pushed in several different parishes and stuff. So, and I've been around that a lot beforehand, so it made me slightly nervous.
I think you've also brought this up before, the definition of love. It's not just enough to say love, because there's a lot of different modern attitudes about what love means.
Yes.
Very true.
Universal acceptance of everything versus standing up for what you want the best out of society and the person.
Right. Well, I think St. Thomas Aquinas defines love as wanting the very best for someone. I definitely say one thing, props to Jesus. I think they did a pretty good job, in my opinion, of showing his humanity while not at the cost of his divinity. A lot of those moments there, you can see how human and simple he was.
There was definitely something about that guy. You showed him on screen, you're like, I know who that is. You just can't.
It's so funny.
They would just pan over, and then you'd just be like, you'd pick him out of the crowd and be like, that's definitely Jesus. You can
so this was
tell.
the first film that all of us got to see together before last semester. Because of all our schedules, we just weren't able to make it work. But this time, Renee was finally able to join us because we previously.
What do you mean? You guys were finally able to join me.
Oh, okay, all right.
But it's so funny actually watching a film with Renee because she's just like she is in the reaction videos, constantly coming up with these quips.
In the very beginning, when the brothers are racing and Ben-Hur falls off his horse and gets really hurt in the very, very beginning, and his brother carries him home and stuff. And I just said like, oh no, he's Ben-Hur.
I heard that. I almost cracked up laughing.
Oh my gosh.
I know who's watching this and feeling pain right now, and I'm glad. Sorry. Anyway.
And then later, when another guy is hurt, he finds him, Judah Ben-Hur, in like their stable room. He's one of the revolutionaries. He's hurt. The character's name is Dismas, and Judah comes across and knows how to treat him. Renee is like,
oh, Dismas be my lucky day. When they help him out and heal him and
so much, yes. This is why we are friends.
Yes. And that's another interesting aspect. Yeah, so Jesus is in the film, but there are also many other characters that one would recognize from the biblical narrative of Jesus, including Pontius Pilate and also, most obscurely, Dismas, who is to the right of Jesus on the cross. Joseph picked out exactly who he was because he's such a Theo nerd.
No, not that.
But I don't know how you knew it. He's only given a name in the apocryphal Gospel of Nicodemus from the medieval times.
Interesting.
Just like, this must be the guy. Jesus.
Ned, what were your overall impressions of the film?
Okay, so as more so as a film critic, not as like a theological kind of critic of the movie. I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was necessarily like a bad movie. I love the relationship between Ben-Hur and his brother. I thought that was actually extremely well done.
Yes, I completely agree.
Yeah. However, I did want to keep making comments that so the guy who plays Ben-Hur's brother, I completely forgot his name. I had him in there, but he plays Doctor Doom in the new Fantastic Four movie, and I just wanted to I just wanted to keep saying, look, just use your weird powers, okay?
You would
Fix everything.
Well, I'm a nerd. What do you expect? The action scenes were very tense and very well done. I actually really loved the boat scene.
Oh,
that
yeah.
boat scene was okay. So, fun fact about Ned: I have a fear of drowning. So,
Oh, I'm so
really?
sorry.
So
That was an intense drowning scene.
so I was watching this, and I'm just like,
That was awesome that Ben-Hur was like, what, he was, imprisoned, and they made him go on
Yeah.
a rowing team. No,
Yeah.
not that.
Yeah,
They made him,
that's a really nice way to put it, Renee.
a rowing. Yeah, he was on a rowing team. That's
they
what
just
it was.
chain your ankles to the floor on that
No big
rowing
deal.
team. But anyway, he was doing that for 5 years, and then, the boat got crashed into. Ned
Yeah.
was freaking out, and I was like, yay, boats, because I love boats. And
Meanwhile,
Renee
Renee's
has a boat, I
excited.
think.
I have a little sailboat, so I was like, yay! Rowing, I love rowing. And then I was like, oh, this does not look like fun rowing.
My other comment was Morgan Freeman. You just gotta love
In
Morgan
dreadlocks.
Freeman. In dreadlocks.
Yes.
Okay, so once again, this is gonna be an awful comic book movie throwback kind of thing. So the entire time that Ben-Hur was talking to Morgan Freeman, he was like Ben-Hur was like in a really like raspy voice throughout a lot of the movie. I'm just thinking, why are you trying to sound like Batman? And then finally, when Morgan Freeman shows up and he's going with the white horses and everything, the first thing that came to my mind was Christian Bale saying, "Do the horses come in black?" You haven't seen Batman Begins.
If I did, it was a long time ago.
Okay, moving on. The horse race. I once again agreeing with you. I thought it was really good, really tense. I saw a lot of it was more realistic and not as much CGI as a lot of people thought. This is the kind of stuff I want to see in more modern movies. Like not so much CGI and just stuff that will actually make your heart thump and like, wow, this is tense. The only part of the movie which kind of like ruined my whole like overall taste of the movie was the ending.
Yep.
I hated the ending, and so bit of a spoiler alert.
Yes.
Ben-Hur wins the race, and his brother winds up. His leg winds up getting cut off because
Injuries.
Amputated.
Yeah, he's an
amputated
amputee
because
now.
because of the injuries he got in the race. And a little while later, Ben-Hur witnesses the crucifixion of Jesus.
Becomes like the Passion of the Christ for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it becomes the Passion of the Christ for basically 5 seconds.
Spoiler alert.
Still not as good. Sorry.
Jesus.
Nowhere near as good. He basically kind of goes through this weird, like, immediate conversion thing, like, oh, this whole vengeance thing against my brother was totally not worth it. And I'm just like, that's a really, like, weird, like, immediate switch of character development.
Right.
And then on top of that, this magical rain just like comes down and fixes everyone's problems.
Pretty much.
And I'm just like, why? No.
It cured all the lepers,
It
guys. Wow.
It
Thanks,
cured all.
Jesus.
It cured all the lepers. It cured the relationship between Ben-Hur and his brother. And it just
You got Morgan Freeman going, there were many miracles that day.
yeah,
His
Morgan
cheesy
Freeman-
voiceover.
Exactly. It was just
Well, that was another, because I said a couple problems already. That was one of my other problems with it, because I believe there are a couple church-approved books that mention a few miracles that do happen,
Yeah.
but they're more on the serious
Like
side.
solemn miracles.
Yeah, they're more on the serious side of people
Rising from
coming
the
from
dead.
the dead and
Yeah.
saying,
Like
you know what
weird-
you just did, you just killed the Son of God, or something like that. Not magical rain.
Yeah.
So, as far as I've heard at least, I mean, I should have to do some research on it to be sure, but I don't think that's a thing, and that's one little point that gives a small bad representation of Christianity, because it's not, Christ doesn't come to make your whole earthly life on here perfectly happy and
No.
peachy. It's to, there's good and there's bad. We persevere through the whole thing. We give everything to our Lord to be perfectly happy in heaven.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh,
Not
I want
us.
to quote Our Lady of
Yeah.
Lords,
Yeah.
who said, like, I cannot promise you the happiness,
Happiness on
of
this
this
earth.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, I just thought the ending was too nicely wrapped in a
It
bow.
was.
But Jesus
Exactly.
had just died. Like, the resurrection's the day where it's all like, oh, great.
Yeah.
It's like right when he died, it was like, oh, great. And it's like,
Yeah. Very
one
anti-
second.
Well, I can tell you, I just looked it up. So this is the passage from the Gospel of Matthew that cries up, and so Jesus gave of his Spirit. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split, and tombs broke open. The bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. So maybe in the movie they should have had the family
Glorified.
dead, but then rise from the dead.
That would have been hard. Okay, that would have been like, okay, epic, awesome, right there.
Movie reviewers
There's,
that
like,
are secular
zombies.
would have thought that even more cheesy. if they were
Yeah,
rising from the dead.
Okay,
probably.
yeah.
I mean, as a Christian, I probably would have really appreciated that. But maybe as a film guy, I probably would still have thought the same thing. But
Yeah.
but no. So on my way here, I was just thinking of of movie endings that were tightly, neatly wrapped in a bow. And my first thought came, and the first movies that came to me were the old fantasy Disney movies, like Sleeping Beauty or that kind
my
of
goodness,
stuff,
yeah.
where it's a true movie of good versus evil, and yeah, things seem happy, hunky dory, and hugely unrealistic when it comes to love anyway. It's a lot more clear cut, and it's more, it has a good pattern to it.
Yeah.
This Ben-Hur movie was very nitty gritty, extremely dramatic, and it was just like, we have this almost like fairy tale ending.
It wasn't setting up for
Yeah.
something.
Right,
like that.
right. It was a
Yeah.
very fairy tale ending, and
Yeah.
I'm just like, if you had like the family cured and stuff like that, I probably wouldn't necessarily have like complained too
Yeah.
much.
Mhm.
But I think there had to be some kind of negative consequence to Ben-Hur's actions.
Yeah.
Because it was basically he just went through vengeance and blah blah blah,
Yeah.
and it was just like, oh no, I lost my brother. The only consequence that came was he lost his leg. And I'm just like, don't get me wrong, it's a bad consequence, but it just didn't feel wholesome.
It went against like the historically solemn
Yeah.
thing they
Tone.
were they were portraying the whole rest of the time.
I
so it's kinda
feel
weird.
I feel like the movie should have ended in like one of these two ways. It should have ended with either Ben-Hur actually losing his brother and like he died, and like because that would just like really push forth the emotional feeling of he really did lose his brother.
Or like his
Because-
brother was about to die and they forgave each other before he died.
Yeah, okay, that would have been fine. That
Yeah,
would have been
that's
okay.
Yeah.
Or his family actually died. Those would have been like two acceptable things to me because I'm like, okay, you really did truly learn your lesson through your mistakes, and now you just have to learn from them and carry on, that kind of thing. Because I'm sorry to say this, life isn't like neatly packaged happy endings. I mean, don't get me wrong, great things happen to people in life, but it's not, that's fairy
Yeah.
tale. That's really fairy tale. Also, my next complaint about the movie was is it just me, or did anyone else here not like the end credit song and not? I just thought it didn't fit at all.
I
It's
didn't
like the
care,
song.
Yeah,
but like
I
I
didn't-
see how it didn't fit.
Yeah, I noticed it was like, okay, that's an interesting choice of song, but like I wasn't
'Cause-
like,
Oh, why did they do
let me put it this way. So this is going back to like my immediate like film critic-y kind of stuff, guys.
Uh-huh.
I'm the kind of person who feels like if you're going to set a mood for a movie or a theme for a movie, it has to stay in that consistent that theme and mood. Probably the greatest examples of end credit songs which fit with the movies are the Lord of the Rings and even to a certain extent the Hobbit movie. Yeah, the Hobbit.
The Last
movie.
Goodbye.
Yeah, oh, the Last Goodbye. Oh.
If I'm ever sad, that's the song
Yes.
I listen to.
So here's the thing: those songs fit
Obviously,
very.
we weren't talking about hot movies.
Oh, awkward.
she said it. I didn't agree to
Did
it.
Those songs fit with the feel of the movies because, for one thing, I mean, it fit with the overall themes of what the movie was trying to teach, and it fit with the overall feel. It felt Celtic-y, it felt ancient, it felt like it really went with it. with Ben-Hur, it was basically a pop song.
It was like a slow pop song sung by some woman.
Yeah.
Some girl.
Yeah, and I'm just like, it just kind of like threw off like.
It took me out of it.
It took yeah exactly.
I was like,
It
oh, the
took
movie's really over. Back in 2016.
Exactly. It didn't make me stay in like a feel of like, oh, this is like ancient times and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
If they were able to make like a good like ancient-y kind of song or like a Celtic-y or just something to fit with the overall mood of the movie, I probably would have been happy.
Yeah, it's like you can sometimes get what I'd call a roller skating
Yeah.
effect when you go out of a movie. Like when you just take off roller skates, you're still kind of like in it.
Yeah.
And that song kind of took me out of that.
But it just shows, guys, that I'm going at really nitpicky with not liking the end credit song. Just it shows that the overall movie was not bad. It was just.
Also, at one point, I found it very interesting how they portrayed Pontius Pilate when he was talking to Ben-Hur's brother about blood. But like, I guess from the Gospels, you get this idea of Pilate as being more of a peacekeeper, because the whole reason he put Jesus to death in the first place was because he wanted to to put down the conflict part of it.
Mm.
So wanting to have peace through conflict seems kind of anticlimactic for the person of Pilate.
What's really funny is that I thought Ben-Hur was more like Pontius Pilate than Pontius Pilate was like Pontius Pilate.
At least what you get from the Gospel.
Exactly.
Oh, ladies, if you see this movie, you will notice that all the girls in it have Instagram perfect eyebrows, and it's 33 AD. And I was quite confused. I was like, I thought they'd have unibrows, but anyway, they're like, I was like, his family looked like the Kardashians walked out in the palace. I was like, what's going on?
Well, they were Jewish royalty. I guess that's another
So they
thing that's anachronistic. Where I mean, everybody has perfect teeth too, and they didn't have
but I'd never seen
braces
that.
back in the
Yeah.
day either.
It was just very distracting to me. But anyway,
I can see.
okay.
So you were like, their eyebrows were on point.
Yeah, they were on point. I was like, but is that accurate?
Those damn eyebrows. 1%.
Really, like, show a picture of these eyebrows. I was like, wow, that's pretty goals. I'm kidding.
I would say, yeah, I did like it overall. The ending took it down a little notch for me, but what I was really enjoying before that, and this is actually something the director talked about what he was going for, is he wanted it to be less of a good versus bad story and have a lot of moral nuance. There were both good and bad traits about sort of both sides of the brothers, and you could really see like three different distinct groups. You had the Jewish royalty, which was Judah Ben-Hur's family, and then you had the Romans, which Masala ended up joining, and then you had the revolutionaries. And sort of both of the brothers were sympathetic. Masala had a lot of sympathetic moments, and there's one change they did from the novel, not just from the 1959 film, where the reason Judah Ben-Hur initially gets arrested, when I saw the trailers, I thought this was going to be like some brutal betrayal that was just done for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
And they really did set up quite a bit in the film that Masala was put in a really tough spot.
Yeah.
And he just sort of, he was stuck between, he had to sort of choose between the family and his Roman officials were really hounding him on being like a traitor, being too sympathetic toward the Jewish, and then, hey, look, your best buddy, he just betrayed us because he had a revolutionary who just shot at our leader. So in the original story, it's just accidentally one of them brushes off a brick off the top of their house. It comes and lands on one of the Romans, and they're like, "Whoa, someone tried to assassinate us," and it was a total mistake. In this one, Judah Ben-Hur is harboring Dismas, the revolutionary on the cross, in his house, is sort of trying to treat him while he's tending to his wounds. And so when Dismas comes out and sees Pontius Pilate going by, he takes his bow and arrow from Judah's house and shoots at him. And so then Masala comes in, he sees the bow, and he's like, oh, what the heck? So
it was very realistic.
Yeah, it was very
very
realistic. And I also thought it was, you could see, especially Judah Ben-Hur, although he's a kind guy, he is sort of naive from his very high royalty status. When he's talking to Dismas, he's like, why are you doing this? Have you ever had a conversation with a Roman? Because, of course, he's sympathetic to Romans because he grew up with one as his adopted brother. And Dismas' experience is like, they killed my father and they raped my mother. Of course I'm going to hate them. They destroyed my family. I think there's also, the director also talks about he wanted to emphasize the women characters more in this film. I don't know, what did you think of the female characters?
Perfect. I thought the female characters were definitely like actually had a really like strong presence in the film.
They did.
Yeah, no, they were very well done. I loved Esther. That was her name, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Ben-Hur's wife. Yeah, you could tell that she really loved Ben-Hur, but he was going down a path that she couldn't follow. I'm sorry, I just quoted the Star Wars awful dialogue. But no, overall, I thought she was a really good character. She had a lot of depth to her.
In the movie, they brought in the women as these pursuers of peace in this time of conflict, which women always have been. Guys, stop fighting, stop arguing, stop beating each other up, stop killing people, and I don't want to see blood. That makes me sad. And sort of a thing. They really had those women in there as active, like.
Sorry.
Excuse me.
Stop.
You literally about exactly.
This is what I'm talking about.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay, but yeah, the women in the movie were actively like going towards the solution, and she was out there like she heard Jesus and was like, this guy's onto something, and she pursued that and followed that, and it shows how back in ancient times women even then had a very important role in the society and holding it together and being those kind of peacemakers and the ones that were all good, love everybody. The women are always there to be nice and loving and stuff. Sometimes to a fault, but
My last comment on the film would just be there was one actor, and it was Jareth Mertz. He was the guy who was Simon of Cyrene in The Passion of the Christ. He was the dad of that kid in The Young Messiah, and he was Masala's right-hand man in this film.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this guy is just like showing up.
He's in every movie.
And he hasn't even been in that many movies, so I wondered, is he an actor who specifically goes out and tries to be in every sort of Christian Jesus movie?
Didn't you say that he was in The Passion too?
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Yeah,
he was
he's
Simon of
Simon.
Cyrene in The Passion of the Christ.
Oh, I thought you said The Young Messiah. Sorry.
I always wanted to do that.
I'm
I just went
confused
into
for
another
a minute.
dimension. Everybody
Oh
always
my
wanted to
goodness.
do that.
I'm really confused for.
Renee was just scooching like a submarine, waiting to surface.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, sorry.
We need a behind-the-scenes camera for this sort of stuff.
It's midnight, by the way.
All right, so now I guess it's time to give our overall verdict. Joe, what did you think?
I might recommend it to somebody who's, provided they're a little bit more knowledgeable about the key aspect that's really missing. I think is very important, and that is that it's a little bit misrepresenting of Christianity to just be like, we'll put a big red bow on everything and everything is going to be perfectly peachy and okay. But I would recommend it in a way if you pretty much know what you're talking about. Also because they do drive the point of perseverance. Like Morgan Freeman quotes St. Paul with the fighting the good fight message later on. But for now, I would rate the movie as far as my approval, between 65 and 70%. It's really just that really key element at the end that brought it down a lot for me. But other than that, a lot of it was pretty good.
I would definitely have to agree with Joe. Overall, it was an enjoyable movie for me. I don't think I would probably rate it as high as he did, but I honestly, I'd probably give it a nice little even 50.
50 is an F.
Well, you failed, Ben-Hur. But anyways, I'd say I'd give it a 50. It was enjoyable. I love the relationship between the brothers. Great action sequences. In my opinion, I'm sorry, awful ending. I just didn't like it at all. Would I recommend it? Yeah, go ahead. Honestly,
I think it's worth a watch too if you're a Catholic. For sure. Yeah, and the way they portray Jesus is interesting, if anything else. I mean, but it is accurate, but like Joe said, it's not saying enough or explaining enough. He's just saying, we must love our neighbor and not hate. It's and if you just repeat that 3 times throughout the movie, you're kind of can you say it a little bit more?
Yeah.
And that's all that Joe was concerned about. But other than that, it's really cool to see Jesus portrayed accurately in film in the guy they chose to play him, in the passion scene. I thought that was very moving. And so as a Catholic, I enjoyed it in those aspects. I'd give it a 150. Just kidding, I'm not going to do my stereotypical, over the top. I'd actually give it maybe a 78%.
okay.
Did you 78?
78.
Okay.
Yeah.
78.
Very specific.
Overall, I would probably give it a 6 out of 10. Again, I might have rated it a little bit higher had it not been for the ending, as we've discussed. But it's also something where I feel a little sympathetic for the movie because I do not think it deserved as much, as low of the reviews it got.
No.
However, it's also not the same in that movies aren't perfectly in a bubble, because it's not like food where like really high-end expensive food, yes, it's very good, we all know that, but there is a time and a place for cheap food because there's the price aspect to it, and sometimes you just need food, so it's better available. And so the thing is with this movie, I mean, you could go see the movie, but the old one might be just as available, and if it is truly a better option, you might want to.
That's really what it depends on. It, like you said, it's hard.
And so in that case, we did want to review this newer movie and also not review the older movie first, just to have sort of like an unbiased view of the new movie, just because it is coming out and we do want to review new Christian movies. But we will also be taking a look at the older Ben-Hur, because I think once we have that context, we'll be able to give a good verdict.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Shing.